Welcome to the Cherry Picker After Dark, the Patreon exclusive bonus episode that we bring you every month. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always is...
But what else could I expect from a bunch of low-rent, no-account hoodlums like you? Hoodlums, yes. I mean you and your friends, your whole sex. Throw them in the sea for all I care. Throw them in and wait for the bubbles. Men with your groping and spitting, all groin, no brain. 3 billion of you passing around the same worn-out urge. Men with your sails. Edward is truth.
You know, I would have been more impressed if you had just had all that from memory, but clearly you're reading off of...
Clearly! How am I going to have that from memory?
I recited
Only Sarah Michelle Gellar can memorate.
I recited an entire Schitt's Creek Moira monologue.
I can do monologues. I can't do that monologue. Not yet. I didn't have enough time to prepare. I was too busy ranking things.
I know. That's if you ever want to like suck the energy out of Edward is Truth, put him on the spot. Ask him to rank something. Ask him what his favorite is.
On the spot, I'll just be like,
And not even on the spot. Like literally give him a week's notice, and it'll still be that. That will ruin his week.
You're just trying to be incendiary to get like the ball rolling, so we'll already be at each other's throats right from the get-go. Can we just start?
That's the point. Anyway, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 4.
Yeah.
If you've been with us this far, we've gone through Seasons 1, 2, and 3. So this is a little fun thing that we do where we watch the entire season, and then we rank every episode of it. And separately, because we tried to do it as a single unit the first time, and that got really vicious. If you've seen it already, it's there for you to watch, but...
I mean, on one side of it, it got vicious. Sure, yeah.
Well, your viciousness, your incendiary nature is a little more passive, we'll say,
or non-existent.
I wouldn't say that at all. I'm
defensive, maybe defensive.
Well,
anyway, let's just go.
Okay. This season came out. This is the 1999 to 2000 season. This is obviously, since we don't have a premise, this is after high school. Buffy and select characters start attending Sunnydale U, which I think is hilarious that there's a university in Sunnydale. Like, Sunnydale keeps growing every season.
Wasn't it UC Sunnydale? Was it a UC Sunnydale
I think it was just
they were doing?
No, I think it's like Sunnydale U or who knows. I don't know.
I could have sworn it was UC Sunnydale.
Same sets, just like repainted and like lockers moved around and shit. But.
Like bigger hallways and shit. Maybe I don't know. Yeah,
there's more light.
A lot more of that, and more tile, more beautiful, exquisite like Mexican tile in the background. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely there's a definite aesthetic shift. Starting with this season that I find where they are a lot more vibrant than, you know, like how they were in the first 3 seasons. Or at least like the first, like maybe like 2, 1.5, because everything was like very dark and, you know, had that Goosebumps TV horror feel to it.
Yeah, that thing where it's like hard to watch during the day. Like you can't really see things because it is so dark.
It's the Scream 4 filter.
Yeah, the exposure. But the exposure for this one, it was a little lighter. It was a little bit more open and a little bit more inviting. Also, they didn't have the big musty library, which I know turned a lot of people off going into this. I've heard so many complaints from people over the years, ever since I plugged into this series, around like 2007, I think is when I started. And I remember that's when I started hearing the reigning opinions from people who were just kind of like, I liked it better when they were in high school. They just should have been in high school the whole series. And I'm like, and not grown or just pretended that they're all held back for
they could have done
indefinite years.
One Tree Hill did, and every season was actually like half a year. So it was actually 2 seasons would be 1 year before they advanced to
that would have been ridiculous. To see like full, I mean, because they at least resembled teenagers, you know, like in. I mean, I thought they were smart to start them in sophomore year and not freshman year.
Okay, well, here's the thing though, like, because this season, for season 4, for all intents and purposes, I think the Scooby HQ, as we'll call it, is Giles' apartment. And I just love it because it's Melrose Place. It's the same. I mean, the exterior shot of the building is the same building as Melrose Place, and obviously the courtyard is not the same courtyard from that series, but it like matches.
It should have been. It would have been hilarious.
Yeah,
If Giles just would have lived in Melrose Place, that would have been great. Have we said that before?
You just see like Heather Locklear like walk by, and she's just like, "You're late on the rent."
Oh my god! Yes, Easter
like,
eggs.
some of
Laura
us have
Layton's,
jobs
like,
to go to. Not
yeah,
you,
right.
obviously.
And you see like Grant Show or Daphne Zuniga like passing like Anya going up the stairs or something. That would be great.
Going back to because we've already discussed our history with the show, because I watched it on its initial run up until like halfway through season 3. So I wasn't, if I caught season 4, it might have just been like one here or there. So very out of context, very confusing. Like, what's the military doing here? What's all this shit? So it wasn't until probably, I think it was around season 7 that it was still going, that I went back to the show as they were releasing them on DVD and rediscovered it that way. And
this DVD?
That DVD, yeah. Well, that's the one for season 4.
Look how
you got the thickie.
how thick this box set
You got the
yeah.
I call them thickies. Eric.
The flippies.
Well, I call them thickies, but Eric will know what I talk about, because it's like with the DVDs or the cases that are just like the big thick ones. Because I know that like now when they release those DVDs, it's just like the thin plastic ones, but those were like those were hardcore. You could fold them all open, and I think they even had like
discs with their faces on them.
Yeah, they had like a box set at one point that had all the seasons in it, like a big one. That's not what I have, but
silver and red. Yeah,
something like that. This season, this might be the funniest season. I'll give it that, but it's very polarizing. Absolutely, as we'll find as we get into it, and revisiting it because it's been so long since I've watched them. As we make our way through all of these, and I found myself. I mean, I don't want to show my hand too soon, but there's maybe I was surprised. We'll say by certain things, but I also, it kind of met my expectations for what I had remembered.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've sailed through the series 3 times in its entirety. But all of that happened, like maybe 10 years or more ago. And so it's been a minute, and I revisited select episodes. I don't know if I mentioned in other pods, but there was one night, it was a Halloween night, and I was just giving candy out for the trick-or-treaters and stuff like that, and I just wanted to hang out, and I had my mom with me, and she's she's down with Buffy and Angel. She knows the whole thing, so there's no spoilers to worry about or anything, because I'd never recommend showing any of these isolated episodes to to new people. You need the context to get the jokes and the references and go, oh, I get that reference. I remember when that happened, and then you kind of remember it for life. Like she still remembers too. Like every time I watch it, she'll like come in and be like, oh, I remember that. I'm like, I know, right? Anyway, but we just kind of picked from each season of Buffy and Angel kind of like things we wanted to watch that kind of put us in the mood of Halloween. And there was 2, I think, from this season that we watched. But aside from that, like, it's been a minute, and so watching them all through, and also watching them not kind of like doing the crossover thing with Angel. This is the first time I've ever done that. So there's part of me that knows some things that happen in the other series where I'm just kind of like, I gotta watch that episode, and I mean, haven't done that yet.
Brilliant on their part to, it's a great way of promoting this new show that they're doing, and there's definitely with the Faith stuff, I almost did put in the 2 episodes there, but I'd rather wait until if and when we do Angel, because I retain the information that I see here. I'll know when it kind of lines up and what happens. And I've seen that show before too, so I could still put it in the context of things like happening here.
Absolutely.
Like Buffy coming back from LA, like both times there's just like, obviously she had a bad trip. It's funny that like, yeah, well, we won't get into after season 4/1 of Angel, but
Yeah.
we did discuss whether we were gonna do like watching them together, and it just for the sake of the podcast, we'd rather be consistent and get through Buffy before we started Angel. So with that said, do you want to put us through the tiers names that you came up with?
Yes. Okay. So it's always fun to start up and go down. So the top tier, which is the cream of the crop, the best episodes of your life, is called Lots of Orgasms. And that's a quote from Anya in the Hush episode. Just below that, and I mean, that's obvious. Lots of orgasms, like who doesn't want that? Just below that, did we not put the "gur" in girl? And that's a quote from Willow from Living Conditions. And I like that because it's just kind of like, it's still got, did we not put the "gur" in girl? It's like, it's still the essence of the show and everything like that, but it's not quite lots of orgasms. Tier just below that, it's a ritual sacrifice with pie. Which kind of, somebody offers you an invite to a ritual sacrifice, you might say no, but if they say there's pie, you might go. So that's just below that. It's a quote from Anya in Pangs. And then just below that, the tier is Angry Puppy, which is a quote from Buffy in The Harsh Light of Day. And the reason why I wanted that one to be just below is because Angry Puppy, no one wants a puppy to be angry, but it's still a puppy. So, might bite you, but And then the lowest tier, Cancer of the Puppy, a quote from Xander in The Freshman. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Nobody wants cancer of the puppy. So there you go.
Right. And I mean, it's done. They're there. That's all I'll say.
You can come up with the tier names next time if you want.
Well, I think it's always like your thing. Like you're always gung ho. I don't like. I wouldn't even remember. I would just leave it as like SABDC or that's not how the alphabet goes. SABCD.
Yeah. What does
CD?
CD?
This is why I'm not in charge of the names. But
what does S stand for usually?
Like super, maybe? I don't know. Like
okay. I've seen it in other tier lists, and I'm just kind of like, wait, what does the S stand for? I saw it once.
That's why it's more fun to make up your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, you sent these to me. Well, we discussed it last night, and you're just like, oh, and I'll get the things. I'm like, yeah, that's great because I do have to make the template. And then you sent those to me, and you're like, how are these? And I was so busy, and I just looked at them. I'm just like, well, they're names, all right. They're quotes, but I wasn't gonna. We're gonna go with it. So, bravo!
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And there's a lot of Anya quotes in there too. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. We've obviously got two separate categories because we're each ranking them separately.
Yeah.
So the top, like we did it for 3. I'll put my rankings there, and then the ones below that will be yours, which I have full reign over here. So let's start with episode 1, The Freshman.
Yeah. What'd you think of that?
I think that. Actually, I like this episode. I like everything about this episode because it's sort of with like the season openers, you have the very difficult task of setting everything up, setting up the story, setting up all the players and whatnot. And I like the kind of like introduction to college life because it's so like contrasted with how high school was, mostly because here's Buffy and she's sort of like completely out of her element again. And I think that the end of season 3, especially with, prom and graduation day, where that was kind of like the height of Buffy finding herself, or just like finding the acceptance that she
Yeah.
had waited 3 years for, like got the class protector award, which comes back in this episode, and was able to wrangle up all the students to fight the battle against the mayor. And then here we are, Buffy is way back at the bottom of the food chain again, and it's actually Willow who's thriving, on the other hand, after like being, Wallflower Willow in high school,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And it's because post-secondary education is more of, it's like a choice, whereas like high school is mandatory. So it's almost like she's among her peers in this case. Like I just feel like Willow is so much more connected with the vibe of college, whereas Buffy is not. Obviously, because we know what her calling is, and this is still her trying to balance both facets of who she is. And I love like how basic this episode is, because I think that's the best way that I could explain it. It's a basic episode. It's very classic Buffy. Like it feels like it's still incorporating the ideas of the previous 3 seasons, but showing that like no, things are different now. And really my only complaint is of like how easily Buffy gets her ass kicked by Sunday and the gang of vampires. But everything else I love. Like I love Buffy kind of like leaning into more of her pettiness. And not even I think like the next episode is more petty, but maybe like immaturity, because the like her getting her ass kicked kind of like sets her off into this own little thing where it's just like, I'm gonna like go in there and I'm gonna regain my power or whatever. And just like her on that skylight at the end, like prying in on them, and then the glass breaking and falling in, just like a lot of like, that's kind of like the start of like where we see a lot of like the humor in this season of just like like Buffy's almost like becomes a like a Lucille Ball in some instances. They're just like clumsy
Ricky.
Well, I mean, not in that way, but, and also feel free to interject. I don't want this to be like I'm gonna speak and then you're gonna speak, because I'm gonna interrupt you lots, because I do that.
Yeah, I know.
And you're gonna interrupt me. So yeah,
feel I just wanted to give you the floor first off. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I don't know about basic in the sense that like it's kind of like it opens like we're back to basics. I like that it opens with them in like the cemetery and this whole like, is this guy ever gonna wake up after the vampire clearly like like just walks away from both of them because he realizes, oh shit, that's the Slayer, or this is somebody who could hurt me even. I love quotes like, I'm all for spurty knowledge. And this is going to be a whole conversation, I know, but the introduction of Riley is a woo for me. I always have a plus column and a minus column, and this one I
have no columns. I made like 2 notes, and everything else is in my brain.
I forgot that this is the episode that has Pedro Pascal in it. A very young Pedro Pascal is Eddie, one guy who's new, who's nice to her and kind of in the same boat as her, and that gets vamped up, and the tragic kind of like loss of him. Yeah, I really wish he could have stayed, because also I just got a warm feeling from him that I always got without ever knowing who he was before, and this time I'm just gonna like, oh my god, he's adorable. I love the Mr. Pointy reference, and Buffy's hurt feelings over her outfit being shamed. I love that I know who made the phone call,
Was it Stu Macher?
To Buffy. It was Stu Macher and Billy Nolan. And I don't know why I just wanted to say that, but and I'm also like, again, we have become contentious over like Xander and his presence on the series. There are things he does that fall into both columns for me throughout this series, but in this particular episode, I'm really happy to see him. And when he tells her, "You're my hero," I welled up. I was like, she really needs to hear that. That's my girl.
I want to say for Xander, like, this is the best season for him so far. I did not have the same issues that I've had with Xander before that I had here.
Less vitriol.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that has a lot to do with kind of like the like the arcs for all the characters, because I think that now just sort of like separating everyone and having them kind of discover their own identity apart from the group, that did a lot to shift his character, because I think, you know, in the first 3 seasons, he was so much defined by the role that he played within the group, and a lot of that, the things that are annoying about him is just sort of his defense mechanism against it.
Sure.
And just how that comes out.
I think maybe he thrived a lot on actually Angel's absence for most of the season too. Like he naturally becomes antagonistic when the subject or topic or presence of Angel is a factor at all. So and that still stands in this season. But also in line with that, like Giles, I have in my boo column to counter the woo, just because of the one quote where he says, "I'll be here if you need me," but because it's so, sure you will. I don't know. I mean, I know he will, but I don't know. The flakiness of like what Buffy needs and him not being able to kind of like key into that bothered me. Sunday fucking pisses me off, and what she does to the Class Protector Award, I never forget that. Jesus Christ. And the introduction of Parker Abrams, we'll get into it, but it's one of those characters who's forever cursed for me, no matter what point.
You're jumping ahead an episode.
He got introduced in this episode, though.
No, that's Living Conditions.
I'm gonna look it up.
You'd
say something.
No, they meet each other for the first time when Buffy is fighting with Kathy, and then she sees her at the cafeteria, and then goes to cut in front of someone in line so she doesn't have to stand next to Kathy, and then that's Parker, and then that's how they meet.
I'm looking.
Anyway, it's
because you've done this before when I've taken notes and I've cited things that have happened, and I don't tend to mix shit up, but I'm gonna look it up.
I'll just say, like, in terms of, I mean, like, I'm not a Riley fan at all, and there's a lot of, I mean, I think it's just a lot of inconsistencies, and we'll get to that when we get to the main arc of the season. Right. But I'm all for Giles. Like, I like I'm not boo. There's woo and there's who. See, that should have been one of the quotes. There was woo and there was who. But
okay, I concede. You were right. I can't find him in the IMDb cast list.
Thank you.
I guess I got my. It's hard to write in the dark. Sorry.
Yeah. But because I think that, like, all of these things that are, that are happening with the core group are intentional. Like, they're being pushed in all these directions, and I think, given where we left off in season 3 of Buffy quitting the council and just blossoming into this independent person, doesn't really need Giles anymore. And this was kind of like I think especially for both Giles and Xander, it was like a very confusing season of just trying to find their relevancy, because it was really, Willow was the one that, like, she was coming into her own most of the time, and Buffy was kind of like waffling through like the same things that she's already been through, but with a little more nuance. And then Xander and Giles were just kind of like, okay, like, Xander's whole thing is like, we need to assemble the Scoobies, like, we got to do that, and Giles is just kind of like, I'm too old for this shit. He's like the fucking Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, just like, we're too old for this shit. Like, he wants to have Olivia over because he's hooking up with her.
Well, I'll have more to say about all of that as it happens. But as far as this episode is concerned, so where would you rank it?
I would put this in it's a ritual sacrifice with pie. Okay. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna put it in the third tier. I'm not gonna read the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always going to say the tier title because that's how I'm built. But I think I enjoy it a little bit more than you. I'm comfortable putting it in Did We Not Put the Gur and Girl, because it does get me into the spirit of things. Yeah. It does make me want to watch the show. And when she gets her groove back, oh my God, when she flips that fucking steak and gets rid of her and everything and protects her little Class Protector Award, I'm just like, oh, my heart.